All right, so the first thing that we need to do is remove the 3 screws that hold the headset bezel on, and then and they're, usually if they're correct, they're just standard, flathead screws. They're not Phillips. And now we can just withdraw this, and then we'll actually just unsnap this, and then that way, the glass is somewhere safe where you won't have it hanging around to drop it somewhere. And then the next thing we're actually going to remove is going to be the mirror, because that uses one of the headset bolts. So, and most of these just come with the 8mm. And we can take that off and set that aside. And then the last one is actually going to be right down here on the bottom underneath, and that's another flathead. And now the next thing that we actually want to do here is we're going to go ahead and remove the Speedo nut. And you might need a plier or something just to get it broken loose, but then you can just usually undo it by hand. You can pull that out. And then what you're going to do here is you're actually going to push up on the Speedo cable, and that's going to force the headset top up. So you push that up a little bit, and then the headset top starts to come off, and then we'll actually move up to the top here. And now that the headset top is pushed up, we can go ahead and remove this nut here. You can see that Matt's got a fancy ground strap that I made him up there, and that's just to make it a little bit, give him a little bit better of a Speedo like ground. We'll pull the Speedo out and then take his ground off, and then the headset top is free, and we'll go ahead and set that aside. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to remove the Horncast, and to do that, I'll just stick my fingernail back here just to get a little bit of a space back there, and then I have a thin screwdriver I can just kind of slide in there without affecting the paint, and then just give it a little bit of, work it out, lift it out like that, and then we can set that aside. And then we'll go ahead and remove these 2 Allens, and do that. We'll just use my fancy handy dandy ratchet, which is the only way to fly with Allens. And we can just lift this out and set this aside. And the next screws we're going to remove are actually going to be these 4 right here. And again, they're all flatheads if the hardware is original. Now, before we get to the final bolts for the Horncast, we're going to go ahead and remove the front wheel just for easier access on those, because they're up underneath the fender here, or the front mud guard, if you will. So, to do that, we just need to go ahead and loosen his front brake cable and get that loose enough so that we can slide that off like that. Take that out, set that aside there, and then we'll go ahead and remove this giant nut. And you don't have to take it all the way off, because there's washers that actually hold it in place. We're just going to go ahead and loosen it, and we'll loosen it on both sides here. And from there, he's got these damper mounts on his that are blocking that washer, but we're just going to go ahead and pull on those and lift up a little bit, just take the weight off, and that'll snap the washer out of place like that, because the washer is actually what retains it, and then that'll drop down like that. And since his has the damper mounts, the clip-on style on the bottom, we'll just go ahead and undo these nuts, because that way we can just get these dampers out of the way. Like that, and that's easy enough. And if you don't have the clip-on type, if you don't have any dampers at all, I definitely suggest you get them if you're going to be running a disc brake on the front. I think I've said that before. We sell them at piston ported. We have clamp-on style. They clamp on the fork legs. Easy peasy. And we're going to go ahead and put that back together so we don't lose those washers, because those washers are a perfect fit inside the damper link, and you never want to misplace those. And now the last bolts, I'm not gonna be able to show you how to take them out, but if you look underneath the mud guard, you can see there's that one right there, and then there's one over on the other side, and they're just an 8mm. You can put an extension on and take them off real easy with your ratchet. So, and then from that point, we can actually remove the front Horncast. All right, just a couple more things to remove, and then we can actually begin the install. We're gonna go ahead and remove the throttle cam, and then from there we'll remove the, we can withdraw the whole throttle, and then we'll take the switch, unplug all that jibber jabber, and we'll go from there. To get at this, we're just gonna turn this all the way like that. And then you can just loosen that and set that aside. And then we can just withdraw that like that and slide it back. And if there's any shims in here, we don't want to lose those. There's a shim right there, so we definitely don't want to lose that. So we're going to put our fingers there, hold that, pull that out, set that aside. And then we can just slide this out. And the throttle is out. Now, since our front cable is actually, front brake cable is already out and unhooked from the drum, we can go ahead and loosen this, and then we can withdraw the cable. And then we're gonna pull this out, and then there's a spring and a little cup in there. You can see my fingers are definitely in the way because I don't want it flying off. And once we get this far, then we can actually just, unhook the brake cable like that. And then my finger was covering it, but there's a little cup, little cap and a spring in here. Don't want to lose those, so that's why I had my fingers around it. And then we'll go ahead and set that aside. All right, and to remove the switch, we're gonna have to take these two screws off, and then we're gonna have to unplug all that stuff and just withdraw the whole switch. While I'm here, I'm gonna go ahead and remove these two screws, and those hold the switch perch in place because we're replacing that whole thing. All right, and to remove the wires from the junction block up here, I'm gonna show you a little trick. I just take this, dental tool that's all dulled out on the end, and I push the wires through on this way, and that way I don't risk breaking them when I want to get them out. So I just push like that, and then I can, just pull them through on the other side once I get them pushed through. And then we have the switch wires free. There's a little bit of a tab here that's really easily bent, so you can just kind of pull on that a little bit and get that out of the way. And then this has the horn wire, so we're going to go ahead and unplug the horn, and then we can just withdraw this all the way up, and now that's out of the way. All right, and now to remove the switch, we're just going to feed these wires through, and to get the brake cable out, we're gonna have to undo it on the bottom and just take the clamp out and then draw the whole thing out. And for the last piece on Matt's here, we're just gonna go ahead and pull this off here. Just work it a little bit like that and go ahead and slide it off. If it's not sliding off easily, you might have to take the whole headset off and soak it, but you definitely don't want to put anything on this, any type of like ply or anything, because you're gonna mar this and you're gonna ruin it real quick. And just because you don't need it doesn't mean somebody else isn't gonna need it down the road. So there's no reason to ruin a perfectly good part just because you don't need it. So yeah, you could, if you couldn't get it off, you can soak it in Purple Power, and then you can, once you've soaked it for a couple of days, not Purple Power, Marvel Mystery Oil. Once you've soaked it for a couple of days and all the screws are out, you can try heating it, but you don't want to burn the paint, obviously. And then you can tap on it with a plastic hammer carefully and just work it up and down, up and down, up and down, and eventually you'll be able to get it worked loose so that's the point where you can slide it off. So, but yeah, that's it for our video. Stay tuned for the next one where we begin to install the hydraulic disc brake on Matt's Riverside.